Think about the last thing you did online. Checked something, bought something, argued with someone you've never met about something that probably didn't matter. Now think about what happens if that just stops. Not your Wi-Fi, not your provider, all of it, everywhere, at once. And then it comes back. What does the world look like in the aftermath? What do you look like? The internet went down. Then it came back. Here's what happened at every level.
Level 1. 1 minute! The internet blinked and came back, and the response from humanity was genuinely one of the least flattering moments in our species' history. Within seconds, 5 billion people were doing the one thing that has never fixed anything. Refreshing! Just absolutely hammering the refresh button like it owed them money. When it came back, the relief lasted maybe 4 seconds before the rage set in. Twitter, irony fully intact, was flooded with people calling 60 seconds of downtime a human rights violation. Someone compared it to 9/11. 30,000 people liked that post, not ironically. The memes were faster than the news. The dog claiming to be fine in a burning house, 2 million impressions before anyone had even processed what happened. The funniest part, Google servers recorded a historic spike in people searching, "Is the internet down?" using the internet during the 60 seconds it was downed. Nobody caught the contradiction. They were too busy refreshing. 1 minute. We acted like we'd survived something. We hadn't survived anything. We'd just been briefly inconvenienced and responded like feral animals. Completely normal behavior. Moving on.
Level 2. 10 minutes is a different animal. The first couple minutes looked identical to level 1. Panic, refreshing, the whole performance. But then something strange happened. People ran out of things to do. And they looked up. And they saw other people. Physically present, in the same room, breathing. Offices had actual conversations for the first time in years. Not Slack messages, not emails with a smiley face to soften the tone. Actual talking, with mouths, in real time. One team in Chicago said it was the best meeting they'd ever had. They'd been colleagues for 4 years and genuinely didn't know each other until the Wi-Fi went out. A barista in London pulled out an acoustic guitar. He played 3 chords. The entire cafe erupted. Now, this man was not particularly good. It didn't matter. He was the only entertainment available, and people were grateful in a way that was almost heartbreaking. Meanwhile, on Wall Street, the algorithms came back online all at once and immediately started executing every order that had been queued during the outage simultaneously. One firm dropped $40 million in 11 seconds. Their statement called it a learning moment. Sure. When it came back, people went quiet for a bit. Sheepish, almost. Like they'd been caught doing something they shouldn't. Being present, I guess. Being human. 4 minutes later, everyone was back on their phones. Of course they were.
Level 3. An hour in and the cracks start showing. First casualty, payments. Nobody uses cash anymore. We decided physical money was embarrassing and inconvenient, and we just tap our phones for everything forever. An hour without internet, and that decision is suddenly looking very stupid. A manager in Sydney just opened the doors and told people to take what they needed and leave their name. He had 400 names by the time connectivity restored. And then there's Gerald, 73, gas station in rural Ohio, manual pump operation. A skill so obsolete that nobody had asked him about it in over a decade. For one afternoon, Gerald had a line around the block and people hanging on his every word. The man was glowing. You could tell. The internet came back, and within 20 minutes, people were online arguing about whether cash should be abolished. Same people who 20 minutes earlier couldn't buy a sandwich. No self-reflection. None whatsoever. Gerald just shook his head.
Level 4. Something shifts at 6 hours that's hard to explain unless you were there. People stopped waiting for the internet to come back and started just living. Neighbors who'd shared walls for years and never spoken propped doors open and pulled chairs into hallways. Nobody organized it, it just happened. The apartment building as a concept suddenly made sense again. Kids went outside, real outside, with their bodies. Parents stood at windows watching their children run around and felt something between nostalgia and guilt, which is probably the correct emotional response. Old radios came out of closets. Battery-powered things people hadn't touched since their parents gave them as emergency gifts that were mildly insulting at the time and are now extremely relevant. The grandparents were right. They're always right, and we never listen, and then something like this happens. When it came back, something quiet happened in a lot of places at once. People looked up from the restored screen, looked at whoever was nearby, and just kept talking. didn't rush back online, chose the person in the room for about 11 minutes on average before the phone won again. 11 minutes. Some people said it was the most present they'd felt in years. That's not a feel-good statistic. That's a slightly uncomfortable one.
Level 5. The morning after is when it really lands. You wake up, you reach for your phone. It's the first thing you do before you're even fully conscious. It's just muscle memory at this point. Your arm moving before your brain is even booted up. And then you remember, and your hand just kind of hangs there. A kid in Seoul wrote about that moment online after everything came back. Said he felt stupid for missing something he'd only had for 10 years. Then said he missed it more anyway. That's the most honest thing anyone wrote about the whole experience. The stock markets were frozen for a full day, the longest halt in modern history. And here's the thing that made economists quietly uncomfortable. Everything was still there. The companies, the buildings, the workers, the products. The number that represents the value of a thing stopped updating for a day, and the actual thing kept existing just fine without it. That's not nothing to sit with. When it came back, Gerald had 9 million views on a TikTok someone made about him. A video of a 73-year-old man explaining how to operate a manual fuel pump. 9 million! Gerald didn't know what TikTok was. Someone had to explain it. He said that was very nice.
Level 6. 3 days and it stops being a story people will tell at dinner parties. Water treatment plants are automated. When the digital layer goes down, you switch to manual. But manual means tired people working long shifts, doing jobs by hand that software usually handles, using printed instructions some of them have never read before this week. Most places held. Some didn't hold as well. Boil water advisories in cities that hadn't seen one in decades. Smaller towns going quiet in ways nobody outside them would know about because the way you'd know about it was also down. Cash ran out in places, and in the gap, something very old came back. Trading, direct exchange. A mechanic in Lisbon fixing a car in exchange for 2 weeks of groceries. A woman in a village outside Porto who baked bread every morning and traded loaves for whatever the neighbors could offer. She hadn't spoken to half of them in years. The bread fixed that faster than proximity ever had. When it came back, the first thing people Googled wasn't news. It wasn't entertainment. It was the names of towns that still didn't have connection. People were checking on strangers. That part, nobody planned.
Level 7. By a week in, people had stopped being afraid of it. Not comfortable, but adapted. Notice boards on lampposts, local papers printing again for the first time in years, sold out immediately, which told you something about whether people actually wanted them or had just never been given a reason to buy one. Community radio reaching people who'd forgotten it existed. The question everyone stopped asking was when it would come back. The question everyone started asking was who let this happen? How did critical infrastructure, water, medicine, food, money get this tangled up in a single network with no real fallback? The people who'd been saying that for years were not getting apologies. They were just quietly correct. When the internet came back after a week, people sat with it for a second. Just sat with it. The way you sit with something you thought you lost and then found. Before the habit kicked back in, there was a moment of actual consideration. That's rarer than it sounds.
Level 8. A month is where you stop counting inconveniences and start counting costs. The economic damage was genuinely historic. Medical harm, slow and compounding, and the kind that doesn't make headlines but shows up in statistics 6 months later. But the same month also produced things nobody budgeted for. 9 months after restoration, birth rates in several countries spiked noticeably. People were stuck at home with nothing to watch and apparently rediscovered each other. Nobody was particularly surprised. The jokes wrote themselves and then became statistics. Children came back to school more focused than teachers had seen in years. A month of unstructured time, of boredom, of having to invent things to do. It did something to their attention spans that was measurable and obvious. When it came back, the scrolling didn't immediately return. The groove was gone. People had spent a month without the drip and didn't automatically run back to it. Some of them never fully went back. Found something else that fit where the feed used to be. Something slower. Something that didn't demand anything from them.
Level 9. A year. This is where it stops being a story and starts being a scar. The countries that modernized fastest digitized everything and quietly dismantled every analog backup in the name of efficiency, they got hit worst. The cruelest irony of the whole thing. The more advanced you were, the further you had to fall. Entire job categories vanished. Supply chains snapped in places that had never considered themselves vulnerable. Hunger showed up in regions that had stopped thinking of hunger as something that could show up. The engineers who'd been warning about this for years didn't get apologies. They just got to be right.
A year is a long time to go without something you built your whole life around. Long enough for people to stop waiting for it and start adjusting to life without it. But a year does something to people that a month doesn't. Farming became respected again. Communities that had been anonymous for decades figured out who actually mattered. Not the loudest people, not the richest people. The person who could fix the generator. The one who knew how to grow things. They'd been invisible for years. For 12 months, everyone could see them clearly. When the internet came back, there was no party. Just quiet relief. The kind that doesn't make for good footage. Gerald retired a month after restoration. 900 people showed up. He cried. 40 million views. He said he still didn't understand TikTok, but he was glad people were watching.
Here's what 9 levels actually taught us. The internet is not oxygen. Oxygen doesn't have outages. We built the entire nervous system of modern civilization on a single network, removed every backup, and called it progress. Then one day, it blinked, and we found out exactly how thin the margin was. What it is a tool, the most powerful one we've ever built. But somewhere along the way, we stopped treating it like a tool and started treating it like the only option. We threw away the backup, deleted the manual, forgot the old way. And when the one thing we kept failed, there was nothing underneath it. Gerald knew how to run a manual fuel pump for 40 years and never once thought it would matter. One afternoon, it was the most important skill in his county. He was always ready. We just forgot to ask. Don't wait for the Wi-Fi to go out to find out who Gerald is in your life.